The world believes we are witnessing a technological war. A war over artificial intelligence. A war over chips. The United States is restricting exports of advanced semiconductors to China. Chinese companies are racing to develop their own alternatives. Governments are investing hundreds of billions into semiconductor manufacturing, from Washington to Beijing to Brussels. The narrative seems clear: control the chips, and you control the future of artificial intelligence. But this story hides something deeper, because when you look closely at the semiconductor industry, something strange appears. Countries may be competing, but the real power inside this industry does not belong to countries. It belongs to a handful of companies. The AI chip war is not really about nations. It is about bottlenecks. But to understand why these companies matter so much, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture. Artificial intelligence may look like a software revolution. New models, new applications, new startups appearing every month. But underneath that software layer, there is an enormous physical infrastructure. Data centers filled with specialized processors. Factories producing advanced semiconductors. Global supply chains moving materials and equipment across continents. In other words, artificial intelligence is not just software. It is also one of the most complex industrial systems ever built. And that system begins with a single question. How are the chips that power artificial intelligence actually made? To understand the real power structure of artificial intelligence, you first need to understand how chips are actually made. Most people imagine the semiconductor industry as a simple pipeline design, a chip built to sell the chip. But the real system is far more complex. Modern AI chips are the result of one of the most sophisticated industrial supply chains ever created. Each layer depends on another, and each layer has its own gatekeepers. Start with chip architecture. Companies like Nvidia design the GPUs that power modern AI systems. But designing a chip is only the first step. To manufacture that chip, you need something far more difficult: advanced fabrication. And today, there is essentially one company capable of producing the most advanced chips at scale: TSMC. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company produces the majority of the world's leading-edge chips. For Nvidia, for Apple, and for many others. But even TSMC depends on something else. A technology that very few people outside the semiconductor industry truly understand. Lithography. The machines that carve microscopic circuits onto silicon wafers. And here the industry becomes even more concentrated, because there is only one company capable of producing the most advanced lithography systems: ASML. Without ASML's extreme ultraviolet machines, no company on Earth can manufacture cutting-edge chips. Not in the United States, not in Europe, not in China. At this point, many people ask a simple question. If semiconductors are so important, why doesn't China just build its own ecosystem? The answer lies in the time scale of this industry. Advanced semiconductor manufacturing is not something you can replicate in a few years. It requires decades of accumulated knowledge, thousands of suppliers, highly specialized equipment, and extremely precise industrial coordination. Even a single lithography machine from ASML contains more than 100,000 components. And those components come from companies across Europe, the United States, and Japan. This is why semiconductor ecosystems are so difficult to replicate. They are not products. They are industrial systems. And this reveals something important about the semiconductor industry. Technological leadership in this sector is not just about innovation. It is about ecosystems. Thousands of companies working together across multiple layers of the supply chain. Equipment manufacturers, chemical suppliers, materials producers, specialized software developers, all coordinated around an incredibly precise manufacturing process. Which means the semiconductor industry does not operate like a simple market. It behaves more like an industrial ecosystem. And ecosystems have something markets usually do not: deep structural dependencies. But the dependency chain does not stop there. Artificial intelligence chips also require specialized memory. High-bandwidth memory.HBM. And once it come up in sk-Hynix.Samsung.micron, if you map the entire semiconductor ecosystem, you begin to see the real structure. A highly interconnected system built around extremely narrow choke points. Chip design, fabrication, lithography, memory, advanced packaging. Each controlled by a small number of firms. The semiconductor industry is not simply a competitive market. It is a network of strategic bottlenecks. Now, return to the AI chip war, export controls, technology bans, restrictions on advanced GPUs. At first glance, these policies appear to weaken competitors, but structurally, they do something else. They increase dependency. When a country cannot access certain technologies, it becomes even more dependent on the parts of the system it still can access. Which means every restriction in the system reinforces the existing bottlenecks. ASML becomes more indispensable. TSMC becomes more indispensable. Nvidia becomes more indispensable. HBM suppliers become more indispensable. This dynamic creates an unexpected consequence. The more strategic the technology becomes, the more valuable these bottlenecks become as well, because governments may influence markets, but they rarely control the industrial capabilities themselves. Factories take decades to build. Manufacturing knowledge takes generations to accumulate. And specialized suppliers cannot simply appear overnight. Which means the companies that already control the most critical technologies gain even more strategic importance, especially during periods of geopolitical tension. The AI chip war does not redistribute industrial power. It concentrates it. Because when the global technology system fragments, the infrastructure that cannot be replaced becomes even more valuable. The real winners of the AI chip war are not countries. They are the companies that control the narrowest points of the semiconductor supply chain. Artificial intelligence may look like a software revolution, but underneath it lies an industrial system of staggering complexity, a system built on rare capabilities. Specialized factories, unique machines, and decades of accumulates. And that system has something every powerful industry eventually develops. Gatekeepers. Companies that control the infrastructure everyone else must pass through. Lithography. Advanced fabrication. AI chip architecture. High bandwidth memory. These are the real control points of the AI economy, not governments, not startups. Infrastructure. The AI chip war is often framed as a geopolitical battle, a technological arms race between nations. But when you examine the structure of the industry, a different reality appears. Countries compete, but power accumulates somewhere else. At the bottlenecks, inside the companies that control the infrastructure of the global technology stack. And if there is one bottleneck that sits at the center of this entire system, one company that almost every advanced chip depends on, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Why does the world depend so heavily on a single manufacturer? And what happens if that manufacturer stops working? Because when you follow the semiconductor supply chain far enough, every road leads to the same place, Taiwan, and this is the industry code.